Canada, welcome to the show.
Hello, hello.
It's nice to have you. Um, how did you get into the Naruto series, but more importantly, how did you get your start in the Naruto Storm series as a competitive player?
As like getting into the series and getting into it competitively. Like it's very simple actually. Like I was like 5 years old, like 2010. My brother just brought home Storm 2 and just like originally it was just like me playing casuals with like him and my cousins. And then like eventually they didn't really want to play anymore, so I just started playing online. And like as I started playing online more, I was like meeting and talking to different people. They were like teaching me way more about the game than I originally thought. And like that's basically how it was from like Storm 2 up until Revolutions, which after Revolutions I took like a small break from the series and then like came back in 2018 and started playing Storm 4. And around that time is when I started that's when I started realizing as well there was like an actual like comp scene for these games because like back then I was just like playing the game casually with like a group of friends who just knew a lot about the game. But then I realized like there was an actual competitive scene to the game. Like I remember back in 2016, there was actually like a competitive like tournament being sponsored by Bandai Namco, if you remember that.
Yeah, I remember that Storm 4 tournament. That was huge. It has millions of
It
views
was
right now.
huge. Yeah, if you check, yeah, I know. I checked a while ago. Like the one of the videos had like over 10 million views. That shit was huge.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Yeah, no, it
Yeah,
was really
that
big.
was huge.
Yeah, it's interesting because after looking at those videos, I thought, wow, this does have potential, but it needs care and compassion for the series, unlike what Connections got, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'll get into connections in a bit, but like, yeah. So it was me seeing that, and because I saw that, I started getting more excited for the series. Because I'm like, oh wow, you can really push this game far, huh? So I started doing that, and then I started coming across YouTubers like Poison Okami, Mr. Air Force, AKE, and I just like they had these character guides and like guys that just like doing like Switch Tech and all that in general, which like got me super into it.
Mm,
And then eventually, like, I joined the Storm community, like Storm community Discord. I find out about like the Evo mod that like Playco and the crew have been working on, which like works to try and like rebalance the game and just like give it the care that CC2 didn't.
yeah, shout out
And
to
just like in
Evo.
general, it was basically just like a natural progression over time of like starting off casually, getting like more into it because like I meet people that are better than me and they kick my ass,
Yeah.
taking a break, and then coming back with like new motivation to play competitively. And then like obviously like towards like the last final months before Connection came out, I was like primarily playing Evo and Generations because like those are like my two favorite ways to like enjoy Storm.
You mentioned
And then like
Mm.
Generations.
obviously, sorry I cut you off.
No, you're good. No, you mentioned Generations. I recall Sink telling me about that, how you guys met over Generations.
Yeah, because like I remember like when we first started talking to each other, it was like the reason we became friends is because like we both like shared like a huge like for Generations. I think it's like a contender for like my favorite Storm game, honestly, like
Mm,
gameplay wise.
I think so too.
Wait.
I think Generations, in my opinion, and I think maybe this is like a maybe I don't know if this is unpopular opinion with the newer people, but I think that Generation was the most balanced Storm game. It fixed a lot of the problems with Storm 2. It made it more balanced. I guess maybe the only criticism like people I could see people say is maybe like, oh, guard is air dash was too fast or something like that, or air dash is too unresponsive or something like that. And I say
Yeah,
to those people, man, move more. I tell them move more. Because the game in Generations, if I see a high level gameplay of Generations, people are moving. They're not really standing still. They're not really getting they're not staying there just taking a bunch of hair dashes all day all game because that guard gonna break real quick. And when you do that, a sweet ass ultimate is gonna happen. Sweet,
I
just
know.
sweet.
That's something I liked about Generations and just the older Storm games. That's what I liked about like Storm in general is that like even though these games were like very easy to get into, there was like clear things that can differentiate like a noob from like an actual like knowledgeable player who knows a lot about the game. That's what like
Definitely.
as I started getting more into like 2D fighters and stuff, it started reminding me a bit of Storm because it's like wow, getting into this, you're gonna get your ass beat at first hard.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
it's
got
very
it.
similar to Smash Bros in a lot of ways, where at surface level, it's like, oh, this is fun. There's these casual things, this very casual environment with items, but then you go and you watch Evo Melee or you watch Smash Ultimate Evo, and you're like, whoa, you're taken aback by all the technical things being displaced on stage and in those videos.
Yeah, that's what I started to appreciate about Storm over time. Because like to me, even though Storm didn't really have like, complicated combos or like high-low mix and stuff like that, something that I really liked about Storm is that it was a game that mainly emphasized resource management and reflexes. That's something I really liked about Storm. Which I'll get more to connections and why I don't really like that game. But like, yeah, resource management was something that I really liked about Storm. Like, if you managed your chakra and substitutions well, that was like a huge thing. If you can manage those two resources well, you were like already better than most players.
Hundred
Definitely,
percent.
definitely, 100%.
And like,
Yeah.
let's say like if you waste your if you waste all your chakra, you can get like punished huge because like not only do you lose like your offensive and defensive options, being like jutsus, chakra dash, and back chakra dash, but you're also like very susceptible to like just kunai spam because like if you have no chakras to chakra dash me, what's gonna stop me from just jumping towards you spamming kunai until I eventually close in on you? Nothing.
Exactly.
Same
And
thing
people
for
don't understand
substitution.
it.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, I was gonna say exactly, and that's what people don't understand. There's like kunais or kunai pressures. There's people trying to waste your subs like 24/7 using anything they can. And I think that's the one thing about Storm that was very appealing to me until connections, and we can discuss connections as a separate topic, of course, within this
Yeah,
podcast. And that is something that unfortunately, in my opinion, connections kind of got rid of that element of Storm. Do you agree or disagree?
like the resource management, and all that. Yeah, definitely. That's
Yeah.
why I was saying saving it for later because like I want to go over exactly why I dislike connections. Because like again, I said my main appeal of connections was resource management, and connections just basically gutted the resource management. You don't gotta manage shit anymore.
Exactly.
I
It's
know.
everything's just so free.
It
Taking
is.
taking a bit of a back seat. So roughly about a year ago, you spoke on evolution earlier in this podcast. For those that don't know, evolution is like Canada said, it's basically a mod being developed that's catered towards actually giving the Storm series the love and care it deserves. And so, with that being said, about a year ago or so, you played Evolution with Poison Okami, and I noticed in the video and things of that nature, he described your playstyle as high fundamentals and mind games, and that you have a lot of potential. So I wanted to ask, how does it feel coming from having a lot of potential in that Evo video to months later going at it with all these big name um, Storm Connections players like Boroshiki, Playco, and the Kunai Cup?
In the Kunai Cup, that's a very interesting question because it's kind of hard to compare it because like Storm 4 and Connections require like they don't really play the same at all because like Connections is way more aggressive, way more aggressive. There's like
Hmm.
any and all defensive options you had were basically gone. Like the only reliable defensive option you have in Connections at this point is like Speed Pill and yeah, Speed Pill and Counter. Those are your only reliable defensive options. So I can't really compare how I would have done versus them like in Connections compared to like Storm 4 or Evo, but going from just fighting poison to just being able to fight those guys has just been like it feels like things are paying off if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because like being able to fight them, I had to like make my way up the bracket. Like having to fight players like Boroshiki and Pleiko, that shit only happened once I got to like top 5 or top 4 in the bracket. You usually don't see that early on.
Yeah. So out of so what? How would you describe Boroshiki's play style and Pleiko's play style? How was it playing both of them in bracket?
Both of them in bracket. Something that I see a lot of people say about them, especially when I look at like Twitch chat and stuff like that, is they try to brush off their skill by just saying, oh, they like abuse broken mechanics, they just use top tiers and stuff like that, which A, if you're playing for money on the line, of course you're gonna pick top tiers. You want to win. And B, it felt like I was genuinely getting outplayed as well because like by playing them and from rewatching the VOD and stuff, you can see that they genuinely have a lot of skill and fundamentals on display. Like they know what game they're playing. They know how to play around certain things. So like it felt like I had a lot to learn still. It was like, wow, I'm glad I'm getting to fight them for the first time and I made it this far, but like I can see easily where I still need to improve, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. It's actually interesting with M. Plako's case because I've been in the scene since the very beginning, way back in Storm 2, and he's the first number one Storm player to ever be number one in Storm 4, but then easily translate over into connections and be number one in that game. That's never happened in any other Storm game where the previous number one has gone on to be the next number one in the following game. It's always hard to transfer, and then they're always fighting back nostalgia, like, oh, I really love Revolutions, I hate Storm 4. So a lot of times, if they stay in the game, they're like a top 15 player, but never this, hey, I'm number one in Storm 4, and now in Connections, I'm number one again. So that's pretty interesting. But Boro's not too far behind.
Boro, I know Valak was winning some Kunai Cups as well. So
Yeah,
like it's very close. You could say either or. Like there's a couple of options for who you could say is like top one in connections, and you wouldn't be wrong because like they're very close.
I see.
But I
So,
do think it's kind of hard to gauge though because like in EU, the EU is having like connections tournaments like every other week, but like in NA, we rarely get anything here. Like yeah, there was like the Kunai Cups like early on when the game came out. Like those were like a consistent weekly tournaments, which were nice. But then like obviously after a while, like Fly's got like a fucking schedule and shit. He can't keep doing that by himself forever. So like eventually it stopped. Plus, I'm pretty sure he just lost motivation for the game anyways. So like, with there not being as many like, with there not being as many opportunities to, like showcase how much they've improved and stuff, it can get pretty hard to say who's like the objective number one, unless we're going off of like first to tens and stuff like that.
yeah. And shout outs to the EU scene. They're like EU is just killing it with between Poison Okami and Air Force uploading first to tens and Okami just uploading guides and then just the scene always having tournaments. They're on it. They really are. We got to catch up.
That's what I've noticed with NA compared to EU, especially back in Demon Slayer as well. Because like I've been comparing Demon Slayer to Connections because I've noticed that like Connections has taken a lot of things from Demon Slayer, especially with the community as well. EU is way more like devoted to the game than the NA side is, especially
Mhm.
when it comes to hosting competitive tournaments. Like we don't have our own like Mr. Air Force E, who's like constantly hosting tournaments for us.
Yeah, I've
Mm.
noticed that. Speaking of Fly Kunai, the reason why the Kunai Cup stopped, was there any outright reason, or you're just speculating that oh he couldn't do it alone? Did anyone offer to help? What exactly transpired of that situation?
That's the reason why he increased the tournament cap because like early on because it was just him hosting the Parsec tournaments, it was originally capped to just 16 players. And then later on he got someone else to help and like host Parsecs for people, so he raised it up to like 24. So it's not like he was able to get help. So that's why I'm saying I'm pretty sure it's just mainly because like it was a mixture of him losing like him losing motivation for the game, and also because like the numbers were dying down as well. The numbers were dying down, viewership was dying down, and the prize pot was dying down as well. It got to a point where like we had a $1 prize pool for the game.
$1. What the heck?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look on Fly Kunai's channel and you scroll down a bit, you can literally see $1 Storm Connections tournament.
Yikes!
Oh man. Hey, but I
There was,
know.
which is like a far cry from what it used to be because a while ago we were able to get like over a $1,000 prize pool for one of the brackets.
Yeah, that VOD's up on YouTube too. By the way, that was
Yeah,
insane.
that was the one I got third place in. I was able to make like $130 on that. That was nice because I got third place.
And that's crazy because if you had told me 10 years ago that we were going to be playing for money like that, I would have laughed. I would have been like, what? No, there's no way. We've
What's
got a
crazier
prize
as
for it.
well is I'm pretty sure we've had Storm tournaments with even higher prize pools back in like Storm 4.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, like with, what are some, that actually reminds me, of, Keon's, Red Cloud tournament. Did you ever get a chance to look into that?
No, I never got a chance to look into that, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was a really huge IRL tournament. He tried to, Keon really tried to pour a lot of his support into the game, but I can really understand because, life keeps on lifing, and at some point, how much more can you pour into a community that's not pouring nearly as much back into you? And so I see why he
The
went in and
main
attacked him.
issue with trying to play Storm competitively is why should people care about a game that the developers don't care about?
Yeah,
Like, I can host a tournament myself with like I can host like the most scuffed tournament ever, but me hosting that tournament alone will be I will be supporting the game more than CC2 is by just hosting a scuffed ass tournament.
That is wild.
yeah. It's
That
a.
was also something like speaking of sorry, I cut you off again, my bad.
Oh, you're good, kind of.
What are you gonna
You
say?
got you got the green light, my man.
I was gonna say, speaking of hosting tournaments though, I was actually like I haven't said this to anyone yet, but I was just thinking to myself like I wanna like I wanna host something for like Evo. Like I wanna like host a tournament for like the Evolution mod.
Sounds like a
Hmm.
good
Because I
idea.
think
It's
because
a
like
very
I've been
good idea.
seeing some like because I fought some of like the higher level players in that game, and I just think the way that game plays is just like it feels great to play and it feels great to watch.
Let's see.
I just think like Evolution at a high level is just it feels like you're almost watching a genuine like I feel the same way watching Evolution as I do watching a 2D fighter.
It's
Hmm.
interesting. It's very interesting. I like that comparison a lot. So in Evo, are there separate top players, or do a lot of them cross over from connections to that or Storm 4 to that?
It usually again, it's kind of hard to gauge because like Evo doesn't really have tournaments and stuff like that. It's mostly just like people hosting lobbies and friendlies and stuff like that,
Okay.
which is why I've been wanting to like host a tournament for it because like it'd be cool to gather people in one spot and then actually like see who is like the best evolution player.
Yeah, I think so too.
What all what also helps as well is that evolution also has improved the netcode good enough to the
Really?
point where like you can play cross region matches and it feels perfectly fine if they're not
Wow.
too far away.
Yeah,
Like
I heard that Evo's netcode has literally one of the best netcodes in Storm history, even better than Connections.
That's
it's the best
insane.
netcode. Like I fought Poison Okami and it felt like really good. Like obviously it's cross region, so it's not gonna feel like perfect, but either way it still felt really, really good.
That's insane. That's amazing.
Yeah,
So we're talking
it was
about
beautiful.
you mentioned Evo and how it looks at the highest level, how it literally feels. It looks as if like the feeling you get from it is similar to that feeling you get when you watch 2D fighters. So obviously there's some appeal in the meta. Speaking of meta, given what you said thus far, do you like the current meta in Naruto Storm Connections or the meta when the
Do I
game
like the
first came
current
out?
meta?
Yeah,
You're asking if I like the meta now or if the game first came out?
yeah, the meta now compared to the meta back when the game first came out.
They're both dog shit. You're basically asking me which one is less ass.
Right. It's kind of like, picking your poison because well, I'll say this, at the beginning when the game came out, it definitely seemed as if there were more relevant matchups, whereas now a lot of those matchups are not as relevant anymore, like Kiba, for example.
No, Kiba, like just them removing armor jutsus alone, that nerfed Kiba a lot, but then they went further beyond. They nerf like they nerfed how much chakra he needs to spend, and they nerfed his damage into the ground in the last patch. So like
Yeah.
Kibo's basically irrelevant now.
Yeah.
He went from like top 5 to just like B tier so fast.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Poor Kiba. Poor Kiba.
Like someone at CC2 is scared of that man being good. Like they saw him popping off in Storm 2 in Generations and like, no, we have to stop that. We can't let Kiba be good.
Yeah, no, I remember that patch that came in Storm 3 that nerfed Kiba into what he became to this day. I remember the day that happened because they pretty much implemented that change where when his dog gets knocked down, he can't combo. The double dash isn't there, and it was pretty tragic. I'm not gonna lie. Although some people still tried to make it work, it just wasn't the same. So it's kind of sad to see Kiba constantly getting the short end of the stick. It's like you said. It's like someone there just doesn't want to see him good at all ever again.
Which is crazy as well, because like launch Kiba is like was like 10 times better than Storm 2 and Generations Kiba by a land mile. Because like connections, you already know this. The guard in connections is like really, really weak. Like you dash into someone 3 times, their guard's breaking. So like you have a very weak guard. Plus Kiba's Fang over Fang did a lot of guard damage
Yeah,
at launch. Plus the fact that he could spark dash cancel it to like not get punished. And you just got like a recipe for a really, really strong character because like he had everything that you basically needed to be top tier in launch connections. He had armor jutsus. He did insane guard damage. He did insane damage in general. Like Fang over Fang was like no laughing matter. He can very easily combo and convert off of Fang over Fang. It was all safe as hell, so like even if the opponent dodged it, he can just very easily like just cancel into something else to stay safe. It was just like if you fought launch Kiba, you had to basically play perfectly. There was like barely any counter to him. Like as far as I know, you could probably find a VOD of me fighting Rage Katana's Kiba. The only like consistent counter there was to Kiba's Fang over Fang was Rene Sharingan Sasuke because his Onyx Chidori beat Fang over Fang.
yeah,
Right. It beat everything actually. Onyx Chidori is the highest priority jutsu in the game because it uses the most chakra.
yeah. I saw Boroshika using going in with that Sasuke and Onyx Shidori for a few of those kunai cups.
Yeah, because he was kind of like Rene Sasuke was like an attempted anti-meta pick, which he was actually pretty good at. He was actually really good at it. At launch, a lot of higher level players had him in like S tier.
Oh wow. So who did they
Yeah, they had him
regard
in
as
S tier.
who did they
Hmm?
regard as the best character at the beginning of the game?
The best character at the beginning of the game, it was a tie between Sarada and Hanzo, with most people saying it like general consensus shuffled as like the game developed. At launch, people were saying Hanzo, and then like over time, as Sarada started getting like consistently high placements, people started leaning towards Sarada. So like at launch, the general consensus was that the top two were Sarada and Hanzo.
That makes sense. I remember seeing that a
Because like
lot in the
especially
subs.
Sarada, because like obviously like armor juices were an issue at launch.
Yeah,
So Sarada's IC2, like like that kunai she throws,
yeah.
that that beat armor jutsus. So
Uh
like she
huh.
was not only the best character in the game, but she was also a counter to like the game's biggest issue.
Right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And then in general, the basic utility that comes from a projectile, disjointed.
A projectile that leaves behind like an electric field plus just the trap, giving her a good defensive option. She just had everything she needed. Especially
Yeah.
in a game like Connections that lacks defensive options. Having a defensive option in your toolkit is extremely good.
Yeah. Well said.
That you can also combo off of as well. Because don't forget, if the opponent triggered that trap, you can like pick up a combo afterwards.
Yeah, I saw a lot of and those tournaments specifically. I saw a lot of that happening with Playco using Sarda. It's pretty cool.
I know. Not just that as well, but like the final kunai that came down had tracking. So like you could substitute the first hit of the trap, but if you didn't move far away enough, the last hit would track you anyways and hit you. Which led to like a lot of bullshit hits, I won't lie. Like you could probably find a tournament that like Dom was commentating, and when he saw that happen, he literally lost his shit on the mic. It was hilarious.
I wouldn't doubt it. I wonder which one that was specifically because I did a lot of them I would watch on Twitch when they would premiere, and then sometimes I
Yeah.
would catch the
It was one
VODs
of the
later.
earlier ones. I think it was like either it was between number 2 or 4. One of those three.
Oh yeah, that was really early on. So
Yeah.
you mentioned we've spoken a bit about connections here and there, and you say you wanted to get into it a little later. What ultimately is your biggest gripe with connections? Because I asked you a question earlier, and you basically said that you know ultimately both metas are just so bad that there's just no good in either of them. So I'm wondering,
So now
what's the
you're
biggest?
asking me like what exactly I didn't like about each meta?
No, ultimately, what would it take ultimately for connections to be better? That's a better question.
What would it take for connections to be better? I think the issue with connections is that like by design, this game is just okay. Let me actually. I don't even think there's any way I can phrase it. I just think conceptually, connections is ass.
Yeah, no, I would agree because
Because like
yeah,
I was gonna say, sorry for cutting you off again, but like the thing about Storm is that Storm has like a very low skill floor. Like it's very easy to get into this game, but it also had a very high skill ceiling. So like the difference between like bad players and good players was like very obvious, or I should say like decent and good players, because like there was such a huge gap between like how good you can get at the game. My biggest gripe with connections is that not only did they make the game easier, which lowers the skill floor, but they also made it easier to get good, which also majorly lowers the skill ceiling. Plus, with how much stuff they removed from Storm 4, there's not really that much stuff to learn. Like in Storm 4, even like 7 years after the game came out, we were still discovering shit about the game that we didn't know at launch. With connections, it feels like there's nothing really to learn outside of just which characters are top tier because like they've just they've just watered down the game so much to the point where just it doesn't feel satisfying to learn. That's the main thing I liked so much about Storm 4 is that it felt like it felt like a process. Like there was always something to learn. There was always something to improve. In connections, the only thing you can improve really is just which character you pick on your team. That's my biggest gripe with the game.
That is not wrong. That is not
This
wrong.
game, I've said it before. I've said it before in like Twitch chats and stuff like that, but I'll say it like now, like with word of mouth, that my biggest gripe with connections is that this game values which character you pick over your actual skill as a player. Like I've gone even with usually in Storm 4 and shit, Playco kicks my ass, but in connections, I'm able to go even with him just because I put top tiers on my team. Like that shit
yeah.
does not take skill at all. It's
It's,
horrible.
it's literally a different
Ooh,
game. I noticed that. I noticed there's three different games you can play in this game. If I'm playing someone and they have like really good reversal assists and I don't, that's one game. The next game is if I have reversal assist or really good assist and they don't, that's another game. And then the third game is if we both have really good reversal assist. There's three different games, and ultimately it goes back to the theme of which character you pick being the most important value thing in this game. 100%.
Like I'm not gonna like say that other Storm games didn't have that issue. 'Cause, like they were definitely top tiers and like broken characters in other Storm games, but like I feel like the main issue with connections compared to those is that like let's take for example Storm 4. You could easily pick top tiers in that game and do well, but like you need to have like an actual understanding of how the game itself works and like the system mechanics and the character you're using to actually do well with those characters. In connections, the characters are just like so strong on their own that you don't really need to know anything. Like you've probably seen it already. Like Tamari support.
Yeah.
Tamari support is so busted that a literal lobotomite can win tournaments with her.
Yeah. Which Tamari, by the way, not the PTS one got nerfed. So you're talking about the adult one, right?
Yeah, the adult one. Yeah, the adult one's extremely good.
Yeah,
I
because
haven't seen anyone. I haven't seen anyone use the kid one since she got nerfed. She fell off hard.
yeah, most definitely. I mean, which before she was extremely good. You know, you couldn't rebound out of her assists, so you got all that time to charge chakra, really good conversions, invincibility, just super stupidly good assist pre nerf.
I remember as well, like at launch, like people weren't oblivious. Like people knew that Tamari support was good, but like she was like no one really picked her. Like you can find like I remember trying out random supports just to see what was good, like when the game came out, and like I'd already set to fly Kunai. I'm like, hey, I was testing out like Tamari support, and she seems pretty good. But little did I know that how like prevalent she would become, because like after all the other top tier supports got nerfed, like PTS Shino got nerfed, like they increased his cooldown, plus they got rid of armored jutsus. They nerfed Ashura cooldown. Just all the like Tamari was always good as a support, and like obviously for her cover fire, but like she was just overshined by just like there were stronger supports. But like after they got nerfed, Tamari was just the next best thing now.
Them
Like
cooldowns is OD.
I remember like people were complaining. They're like, "Oh my god, can you please nerf Tamari? This character is so the support's so good." And then CC2 is like, "Okay, we've read the surveys. We'll adjust her in the next patch." All they did was just slightly increase the cooldown. They didn't touch that shit at all.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I think those surveys are a meme. Like they work, but at the same time they don't, because it's like, people want like Tamari is a severe like actually fixing the actual properties of the hitbox, not cool down the supports. I think this is maybe a hot take from me, but I think Connections did like the weird fix where it's like instead of actually fixing the problem with the actual jutsu, making like certain jutsus activate longer, take certain sequence to have more open boxes, or you know make subs make subs in a certain way. They just say, oh, let's increase cooldown and see if that works. And I guess it is a fix that works, but eventually it gets to a point where, which one's going to have the better cooldown, I think. That might be like in that scenario. But maybe I'm just wrong here since I don't play connections very often. Am I wrong
My
there?
main issue, yes and no. My main issue with cooldowns and connections is that it just feels like a lazy way for them to like patch strong supports. Because like if you look at the patches they've done to all the strong supports, you'll realize that all of them have just been given longer cooldowns. Like Hinata and Ashura were like the go-to supports at launch. All they did was just increase how much chakra they use and increase the cooldown. That's all they did. They didn't touch anything else. Same thing for
Sounds
Hagoromo.
good.
Hagoromo was top one support for a while, and all they did was just increase the cooldown. Like it
Yeah.
just feels like
Yeah,
a quick band-aid fix.
yeah. Imagine if like
Well,
people say, "Oh, we want Hagoromo back to like full power," then it just decrease the support cooldown, and then he's gonna be good again.
Yeah.
like not many characters have had patches. Like not many characters have had changes in this game that like actually go into their moveset and change something like directly. It's always just been like a cooldown or a chakra change or a defense change as well. Because like that's one thing I do like about connections is that characters have different defense values. So like faster characters like Minato have lower HP and stuff like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Hmm,
That's like one of
that's
the few good
interesting.
things I like about connections.
It was
That's
one of
interesting.
the
I did not
things it
know they.
gets right.
They did
Yeah.
that, and then there's also characters like I like. There's something funny with Gara as well, because like there's like three different versions of Gara. There's like the Great War version. There's the five Kage Summit version. Then there's just the regular version.
Yeah.
Yes.
They all have different defense and damage values. For
Huh.
example, Great Ninja War Gara does the lowest amount of damage, but he also has the highest amount of HP. And then 5 Kage Summit Gara has the highest amount of damage, but also the lowest amount of HP. And then regular Gara is just like in the middle of the two.
It's interesting.
And
That
he's
is
the only character
interesting.
that has that. Not even Kakashi has that, and he has like three different versions.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Are there any other characters? But you answered it. No. He's
They
the
don't
only one.
have that. No.
So that's
Huh.
interesting.
I
Only
always
only. Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say I wonder why that they have like three different versions of the same character essentially, and I thought it'd be like costume changes, but you're telling us that it's actual defense values and other value changes, which is kind of interesting to me.
That's only Gara does that, where it changes defense and damage. Like for characters like for characters like Naruto and Sasuke, it's understandable because like they're completely different movesets and stuff like that. Like Baryon Naruto and Six Paths Naruto have different defense values. But like Gara, like all three versions of Gara have the exact same moveset. So it's weird they did that for him. But
Ooh,
like not any other character. Like Kakashi.
Exactly.
that would be fine. That would be a lot better reason why we have like redundant character selection screens.
Again, because like again, the game doesn't tell you this, and it only applies to Gara, so that's why it's really freaking weird. Like
They don't
it
tell you
doesn't apply to
nothing.
Kakashi, it doesn't apply to like Hanabi, it doesn't apply to any of these characters.
Just Gara.
They just really like Gara.
I guess
I
so.
guess they like the Gara Sand, man.
They don't.
They like that sand attack.
So one thing
Yep,
we do know is that they really like Gara, but they really hate Kiba.
they really like Gara, but they really hate Kiba. Yep.
Discrimination.
um,
Discrimination, y'all.
I noticed that in preparation for this video, we noticed that you do play other fighting games like Strive, for example. You play a lot of Strive. And while we will talk about that too, I was wondering from someone who has a lot of experience in the Naruto scene and then going off to play Strive tournaments, ultimately in comparison, focusing on the community and not the game of Naruto, what's one thing, is there something that the Naruto community is getting right in comparison to the traditional fighting game communities that could maybe help it survive long term?
My something I don't like about the Naruto community is how quick they are to just ban things they don't like. Like in fighting games, if something strong is discovered, you have to learn counterplay to it, how to counter it, stuff like that. Like fighting game communities hate banning things. Meanwhile, the Storm community just seems quick to ban stuff they don't like, which is something I really, really dislike.
I
Like
mean,
this happened a lot in Storm 4 as well, where like every tournament would have like a whole paragraph for things that were banned, like tech, characters, and all that. Which again, it only really like stopped happening towards the end because like Placo was speaking up about it. Like literally, Placo was like the only player I saw saying, "Why the hell are we banning things?"
yeah, he actually
Like
spoke on
everyone
that
else is like
recently.
wanting to ban stuff.
Yeah, no, he
Sorry,
spoke on
go ahead.
that. No, yeah, he spoke on that recently. I saw on Twitter he was engaging in conversation with some players such as Air Force and a few other players, and he talked about how we've already been down this path before. Let's not start the tradition of banning stuff, and he was just trying to get everyone on board with that. So it's interesting that you brought that up.
I bring it up because like I've never seen any other community do this. Like if something strong is discovered, people lab counterplay. They try to find counterplay. They try to see different interactions, how it interacts. Like I don't really see that for Storm. It's just, oh, this looks OP. Let's ban it.
Right. Coming from the Smash community for several years, there was a time in Brawl where they were banning Meta Knight, but it was a very small time period, and they said, yeah, we're just going to keep this character unbanned, especially because a lot of the Japanese players said, look, we're not going to travel all the way from Japan to America just to not be at our strongest and not be able to use this character. And so that helped
Yeah,
as
that's
well.
another reason as well why people were against the Meta Knight ban because like most top players in that game played Meta Knight.
Yeah, they spoke out about it. And then later on in Smash 4 when there was Smash 4 and then Smash Ultimate. So in Smash 4, Bayonetta was really prolific, really really strong character that people wanted to ban, but they said, we're not going to do this, and it led to some unsavory moments for those who may not know. Evo, the last Storm or the last Smash 4 Evo was kind of horrific because in grand finals it had two Bayo players and they were doing it was just really bad, but ultimately,
Oh, I remember that. They were just like holding down, like they were just charging their gun in place and they weren't moving or anything. They
Yeah.
were just like taunting and stuff.
Exactly. That was pretty insane. And then in Ultimate, there's been a lot of Steve controversy, but ultimately, and there have been a few tournaments experiment with banning him, but ultimately everyone's just gonna keep him on ban. And I think at this point, I think that once you ban one thing, you just go down this path, and ultimately, you should only really be banning something if it's absolutely necessary, like a game breaking glitch.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. I
Like if
think the only
something
game
really
breaking.
has no counterplay, then go for a ban, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only band that I would viably, reasonably have in a Storm game ever, unless you really want to go into really detailed specifics, is kind of like PTS Kank from Generations. But that's kind of like the only band I would have in a tournament like that. I don't know if anyone would agree or disagree with that.
If I remember correctly, like he was like popular character to ban, but I know some higher level players didn't want to ban him either. They still wanted him in the game.
Yeah. I
even
still
though,
want.
even
I
though,
wanted him in the
oh, go
game
ahead.
back then. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Back during that time when I was a top player in Generations, nah, I wanted him unbanned too.
My man would say unban PTS Kank, and the only time he's in this tournament will be is a PTS Kank tournament.
Right. Speaking of Evo, how do you feel about Nitro winning Strive this year with Jacko?
He absolutely deserves that, especially because he wasn't like, cause like Jacko's not really like she's a good character, but she's not like a top tier. So it's nice to see someone win with a character that's not like on the top of the board,
Hmm.
especially because like Jacko's a pretty rare character in this game.
Really?
Yeah, Jacko's not that common,
Let's see.
mainly because like she's pretty hard to get into.
Oh, okay. So there's just a lot of things technically to learn, and a lot of people are just like,
Yeah,
will just shy away from that.
yeah, and again, she's good, but she's not like a top five contender or anything like that.
Wow. So does that mean it's possible to win with characters outside of the super top characters in Strive right now?
Yeah, right now the general consensus is that Strive's at its most balanced state.
That's good to hear.
Like even the lower level characters are capable of winning stuff.
Huh. Even Faust?
Uh, he is capable, but they definitely got to work a lot harder.
Yeah, because when I played Strive at the beginning, I main Faust. So I don't know if it's more hard than when it was back then, but it definitely got boring for sure having to work that hard.
Oh, they've definitely given him a lot of buffs, so he's definitely a lot better than he used to be.
Okay, that's awesome. It's really good.
Like now, what he can do is he can instead of immediately throwing out an item, he can like eat it and save it for later.
Ah, that's
Like they
new.
give him a new move.
Yeah,
Yeah,
item storing. That's interesting. Okay, now I have Strive, so I'm gonna have to re-download that and get back in the lab because that's interesting.
yeah, really fun. 'Cause, like it lets you know what, because like item pulls are random. Like being able to eat an item and then throw it later, you know what item you're gonna throw out next time. So it's
Yeah,
really good.
yeah, for sure.
Like say like before you break the wall, you can like quickly eat an item and then break it.
Oh wow. So that's actually really interesting. So right before you break the
Yeah,
wall, you can just go ahead and set up. Okay.
yeah.
So would you say that Strive is your main game right now? Is that the game you're really playing a lot of right now?
At the moment, yeah, it's my main. I'm shuffling between different fighting games, but it's definitely my main one at the moment. The one that I have the most like passion for.
Why Strive over like Street Fighter or Tekken or MK?
I just think this game just it just clicks to me really well. I like it. I like how aggressive it is.
Yeah, I've heard that isn't this one of the more aggressive Guilty Gear games in comparison to the past
It's a
ones?
more it's very aggressive and it's also a very high damage game.
Yeah.
Like there are some characters in the roster whose like their whole gimmick is they just deal like 80% one combo.
So it comes down to whether or not they can hit that combo to win or
Yeah.
hmm. That's very interesting. I mean, Guilty Gear Strive. It's interesting because Guilty Gear Strive came out in a really weird time, and it set the precedent for all these other fighting games with its netcode, implementing rollback netcode.
Yeah,
Just
especially with like DBFZ players, because I remember a lot of DBFZ players were like trying out the beta, and they were like, "Oh, I can't go back to fighters now and play on delay-based netcode."
yeah,
That was really funny.
that was a really funny moment, and uh DB Fighters Twitter, because everyone was just fed up. They're like, I don't want to go back. Please release rollback already. And it was kind of funny seeing that, because that's just how big of a difference it is. Like rollback netcode, I hate to say it, but it's really mandatory moving forward. Like we got to have that, because once you play on rollback, you really can't go back.
Literally, it was also that, and also because like DBFZ is a very fast-paced game, especially for a game like that. Rollback is hella mandatory. Like there are certain characters that were like top tier just because it was hard to deal with them in delay-based netcode.
Yeah, no, that kind of happens a lot at Smash Ultimate online. Its online is not that good, so certain characters are
Smash
weaker.
Ultimate.
Yeah, and
I
certain
remember
characters
I
are
played that
stronger.
game competitively for a short amount of time. In that game, even like the absolute best conditions possible, there were still like 11 delay frames at the bare minimum.
Oh, what the hell?
Yeah, it's
That is
Yeah, 11
rough.
wild.
frames of delay at the bare minimum.
It's rough for sure. Like it's especially rough when you're playing an online match and they're using DDD and the delay is so heavy that their forward smash is like it feels like their forward smash is plus or something. It's pretty crazy. Which would otherwise be a super laggy forward smash, super easy to punish offline, but online it goes from being super laggy, super easy to punish to being plus. So that kind of gives you an idea.
That's
What
something
the
that
heck?
that's something that sucked a lot because like a lot of the fastest paced fighting games had the worst netcode and it was miserable. Like playing fighters online compared to offline, that's two different games. That's not the same game right there. Like
Yeah.
things that you previously wouldn't react to were suddenly very easy to react to. Like Dragon Rush, for example. Dragon Rush and like 6M were like OP online, but offline they were like unusable because it was so easy to deal with them.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
hilarious.
No, 100%. I mean, for sure, because I know I swear when I played DB Fighters online, I swear I was um, DPing so many of those Dragon Rushes, and nope, delay. I would always get open up, but offline it was a different story.
No, literally.
Yeah. I mean, as a whole, we've talked quite a bit about fighting games. We've talked about connections, we talked about Strive, just fighters as a whole. I'm wondering, what's your major goal with all this when it's all said and done? What are you aiming to do in fighting games as a whole?
Honestly, fighting games, I'm not planning to make a career or anything out of them. I mainly play fighting games just for fun and just to improve and meet people. And it is working off. I've managed to meet a lot of people, make a lot of friends. I've managed to somewhat make a name for myself in the Guilty Gear community. Some people regard me as one of the best Sin players in NA.
Hmm.
Oh wow, that's actually pretty cool, man. I did not know
That
you actually had a living like that.
and I managed to place second in a regional a couple of months ago, beating some of the
Oh,
beating some really good players in the region and one of the better players in the world.
oh, that's actually kind
Wow.
of cool, man. It seems like
Hmm.
you're gonna get cred, and you maybe one day you can be the next freaking Guilty Gear influencer, man.
Or
Let's hope.
or
I
just
still got a lot of way to go though, because
yeah.
I still fumble in some spots.
Hey, for sure. Are you planning on going to Evo next year, assuming it gets in?
I want to go to Evo, but I'm definitely planning to go to Frosty Faustings if you know what that is.
Oh yeah, for sure.
No.
I've seen a bunch of those Frosty Fausting tournaments like back in the day in Justice MK9. I watched it heavily a lot back then. So
Hmm.
you're going to Frosty's what this week or next week?
No, Frosty's is in January,
Oh, okay.
and
Okay,
it's gonna be for like 4 days.
Oh, I see. So it's
But I
more.
do like. Sorry, I cut you off again.
Oh no, you're fine. You say you do.
But I do attend locals though because like before locals weren't really that common like in my area. Like they were, but they were only for like the big three like Mortal Kombat 1, Tekken, and Street Fighter. And besides that, all the other games like Guilty Gear and stuff like that were like one-off tournaments that wouldn't happen that often. But recently, there's a bi-weekly tournament series near me that I'm able to go to, so that's nice. They shuffle between Guilty Gear and Grand Blue every week.
Nice. So now you got a
Yeah,
nice little local scene to go and play around with, and that definitely helps a lot. I mean, going to your locals in general, just to practice, is just so much of a different experience. And even though the play isn't, it's not like going to a super big tournament where there's top players. Like you can still get hype, you can meet lots of people, and just the amount of knowledge you learn from other people playing different characters is still pretty significant. Because I used to go to a lot of Smash locals, and I've learned a lot of matchups because I would sit down next to someone and just grind for an hour or two, and we would talk, and not even just talk about Smash, but just talk about other things. So definitely getting more involved in your local scene is just super huge there.
definitely. Also, the people you can meet as well, because I've realized from going to locals, there are a lot of really good players that just don't compete or play online that often. Like they're just like exclusively local players. Like one of the best players in our region, he like exclusively plays in offlines.
Yeah,
He doesn't really touch online brackets.
yeah, that's pretty. No, I believe it. I met a few people like that in Smash where it's like I was getting destroyed at some point, and they would say, "Yeah, I play when I come here, and that's it." I'm like, "Really? Okay."
That's the craziest part. Like people that are cracked as fuck at a game, but like you ask them how often they play, and they're like, oh, like every other week I'm employed and shit. Not that often.
Right.
They're just like natural born goats.
Exactly. It's like it's very humbling, and then you also wonder, well, if you're this good now, how good would you be with intentional practice and then playing at your house all the time?
Yeah, how cracked would you be if you actually grinded this game and then play like on a one-off day?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely been a joy. We've talked about, fighting games far and wide, and then connections as a whole. But Canada, where can people find you?
Mhm. So where you can find me? Well, primarily the best place you can find me would be on Discord and Twitter, which are like the main places I post and talk to people. My Twitter is nay0623, KNAY0623.
Awesome.
And I have a Twitch channel as well. It's Kaneda DI, KANEDADI. I don't stream that often, but I am occasionally there where I sometimes stream like tournament runs and stuff like that.
Well, there you have it,
So if you want to
people.
find me, that's the place you can find me.
Well, there you have it, people. You can find Canada at any of those mediums. I'm going to be linking. We're going to be linking that in the description for those of you watching on YouTube, and of course in the description of the podcast too. So be sure to check them out. Up and coming and strive. Honestly, from what I've seen, definitely getting those results. Definitely getting there. So I wouldn't be surprised if he makes a big splash at Frosty's, and also be on the lookout for him at Frosty's in January as well. This has been another episode of The Conversation. Thank you for watching.